had to happen eventually, huh? Hello everyone, and technically welcome back to Let's Play Megaman and Bass. It's been several years since we played through the game as Bass, but I figured since we're doing a little mini marathon, we might as well revisit this game and play it through as Megaman. Now, I should note, if you're very keen-eyed, you'll notice this is the Super Nintendo version. I also did this the last time we played the game. I'm using the Aeon Genesis fan translation of the Super Nintendo version, just so I don't have to deal with the GBA version screen crunch and lesser audio quality. So, we saw Mega Man's abilities just then. He works about the same as he does in every other Mega Man game, especially 8. He can slide, he can move while shooting, he can charge his attacks, that's about it. Bass has the double jump, can shoot in 8 directions, and can rapid fire his attacks, although he can't move while attacking. I covered the very brass tacks of this back in the old LP for Bass, but he has the easier time in levels, especially in the GBA version, whereas Mega Man generally has a better time in boss fights, but you can tell a lot of the level design is made with Bass in mind, because some of the jumps they want you to make are pretty tight. With that said, the starting museum level here has a couple of weird little setups, like we bring back the drill bits from Mega Man 2, but it's not too hard as either character. So as for why I decided to throw this into the little like Mega Man mini marathon we're doing right now, it's been over half a decade since I did the Bass playthrough, I think, at this point, and I figured I might as well do the Mega Man just so I can get it out of the way. Plus, it might make sense with what the next game we're going to be tackling as well, which is a little bit of a unique game that might have ties to this. Yeah, I did go back to the old LP, though, for Bass, just to see how much has changed, and, well, that was in the era where instead of having actual backgrounds, I just put a lower opacity version of the actual game footage that I'm not even sure if I actually put the blur filter over it at that point, if it was just the actual footage but lower opacity. There's all sorts of methodology when it comes to like what to do with the black sidebar. Some people just render the video as the main game and leave it as 4:3, some like it as 16:9 still. I find this to be the best solution myself, but that's just because A, it allows me to use my creative bones to make little layouts based off the game in some form or otherwise. That was the hardest part level right there, by the way, because it's wind platforming. Great. Proto-Man! That's far enough, King. First Dr. Wily's lab, now the museum. I've now obtained all the blueprints on new combat robots. With this data, I can assemble an invincible mechanoid army. Since you're a robot, you can join me if you want. Looks like your friends come to help you. I haven't got the time to spend on you two. You ain't going anywhere, King. Enough, you annoying little pest. Ooh. Proto-Man! This is nothing. It's just a flesh wound. Leave this to me. Head back to Dr. Light and get yourself patched up. Okay, bye. Coldman utterly bisected, hot damn. It would be simple to kill you right here and now, but I'm afraid I must see to assembling my great king army. I shall let my green devil take care of you. You know it's a sign of a game when a devil's the first boss fight in the Mega Man. So Green Devil sends little goops out at you, you shoot it, and then it opens up a hole and you shoot the main core. As you can see, the Mega Buster kind of tears through its health, though. As Bass, you kind of have to just stand there and aim diagonally up, and it takes a lot longer, but right there you can see the Mega Buster's power over the Bass Buster, absolutely. And we even have a save system. Kind of a rarity in the Mega Man games, actually, until the PlayStation. And here's our stage select, and it's a pretty unique one for the series. We only have 3 of the 8 Robot Masters we can tackle at once, but for everyone we beat, we unlock more. And we're going to be starting off with Coldman just because, frankly, starting with him has always just felt like it's the best weakness chain this game has to offer, overall. Let's see, Coldman, a robot created to freeze DNA for dinosaurs. His body temperature is kept at absolute 0. Good point, he's got a carefree attitude. Bad point, he's a little slow on perception. He likes frappuccinos, and he dislikes the El Nino effect. So his stage, by and large, is, get this, the ice stage. But surprisingly, there's very little in the way of actively slippery platforms. The main thing we're going to deal with is ice platforms that crumble beneath us after a second we stand on them. With that said, even as early as this level, you can see they actively do kind of put little different routes in the level for who you're playing as. Like his base, you could just double jump through there, Mega Man could slide back there, all that jazz. But you might also notice the discs around. I collect a few throughout the LP, but I'm not getting them all. Those discs are the bios I've been reading for so many Mega Man LPs. And they are unlocked in the CD database, and you can just read the little bios from there. But that said, you can't get them all as either Mega Man or Base. You need to do both playthroughs to get them all, because I think they are locked to the cartridge overall. Both in the SNES and the GBA version. Either way, here we got a mini-boss that is absurdly more difficult in my eyes in the GBA version, Snowler. This little snowman will generate some snowmen that'll fall down from the sky, and then will suck in some air to try and drag you in and then generate more. As base, this mini-boss takes forever to A, because the Base Buster is actually inherently weaker in base power than the Mega Buster, but also because you can't take advantage of, say, the charge shot to just take out more HP at once, plus you kind of have the awkwardness if you can't move and shoot at the same time. So, as for my own experience of Mega Man and Base, I have about the same experience as most people here in the West. I had a Game Boy Advance growing up and saw Mega Man and Base on GameStop, or I forget if it was a GameStop or a Walmart shelf. And was like, I like that series, and picked it up and played it and liked it, but nowadays it really is in the bottom half of my classic game series list. And a lot of that's just because the game, even with the level design weirdness that has, just kind of feels worse than either Mega Man 7 or 8. And there's partially some reason for that. It's like they tried to put Mega Man 8 in some regards onto the Super Nintendo. Because Capcom did try to put some of their PlayStation games here and there on Super Nintendo in some form. One of the Street Fighter Alpha games even got a port to Super Nintendo. It's one of the few SNES cartridges I can think of with an active load time. But like internally, this game is even called Mega Man 8.5. I think there's even text basically stating that in the code. So this was just to try to tide over Mega Man players on Nintendo platforms on the time, at least if you still have a Super Nintendo. And this was also one of the latest Super Nintendo games released. This came out, I think, in '98 in Japan. Not the latest Super Nintendo game, period. I think some of the Fire Emblems came out in '99 or 2000, but ooh, that's very late. That is into the N64 era of Holstein, to the point where the disc drive was coming out, I think, in Japan. Something I will say I do like about the CD database system in this game, though, it encourages multiple playthroughs of stages in ways the classic series generally doesn't outside of 7 and 8. Because while you can get some natively as Mega Man or Base in any of the stages in the game that have them, by and large, there are some in every stage that require other Robot Master special weapons, if not the one from the stage you're in. And while that can be annoying in some regards, at least it means they had some ideas of what to do with the weapons. With that said, it's time for Coldman, who is the most immediate difference between Mega Man and Base's playthroughs, because Base you can only do 1 damage at a time, and he has a long invincibility period. Main thing Coldman does in the first half of his health is slowly jump towards you 1/4 of the stage at a time, sending out an ice wall that'll bounce to him and then back to the wall, and then he resets. About halfway through his health, he spawns in a little helper droid that will try to gum up your jump, but you can shoot that down pretty quickly as Mega Man as well. This fight, in my eyes, is most famous for the task portion of Base's playthrough, or if I remember correctly, I think it was like Sparky's task. He just shot the Base Buster in the invincibility period to the tune of the music, and you know what? That's beautiful. I hate this fight as Base. As Mega Man, it is not a problem whatsoever. With that said, for beating him, we get a bit of a unique ability for the series, Ice Wall. It has some combat utility, but I'd say it's more for platforming than anything. You generate a thin block of ice you can then jump on to use as a platform, but you can also push it forward and it'll slide along the ground, not only doing damage to enemies along the way, and trust me, it does do a lot of damage. I think it can even one-shot Sniper Joes. But you can also jump on it while it's moving to act as a moving platform in case you're trying to, say, make a longer jump or a tighter jump in some instances. With that said, it is definitely a little awkward to use as a weapon against even enemies like Sniper Joes. It's also pretty awkward to use against the boss that's weak against it. With that said, here's the CD database. I've been covering these CDs for better part of a decade now. This is where you get your little bios, your likes, your dislikes, your good points, and your bad points for most of the characters throughout the classic series up to this point. 9 and 10 sort of got some follow-ups to this as we've covered before, but it's just cool that they had these to begin with. And I believe the Aeon Genesis fan translation accounts for the fact that there's both an English and Japanese text set for the databases. Because in the fan translation patch, when you download it, there's 2 actual patches. There's the one I'm using here, which is by and large based off the American text. But then there's one that gives you like all the Japanese names, like in case you like Rockman and Forte more than Mega Man and Bass for some reason as names and all those. It's real cool. The fan translation's honestly really high quality. With that said, now we're into Burnerman's stage. I hate this stage, but I like Burnerman a lot. He's a robot created to destroy nature, just straight up. His wave burner can burn anything around him. Good point, he's faithful. Bad point, he's a little jealous. He likes global warming, he dislikes self-destruction. One of the most evil guys in the classic series. And also notably, he is one of 2 robot masters in this game designed by Hitoshi Ariga, the other one being Dynamo Man. Ariga, for those unaware of him, has been in contact with the series for a while now. I think he started with a manga in like 96, but then he became the character designer for 2 robot masters in this. He did the game's Japanese box art, but he's most well known as the artist for the Megaman, Megamix, and Gigamix mangas, which, if you haven't read those, they are very good, but they're definitely more totally intact with the X and Zero part of the timeline than Classic, because they do some dark shit in those manga. And then the Mega Man 7 things also battle and chase for some reason. Fans of Klonoa will also recognize Ariga, because I think he was the artist for the webcomic that ran for a good couple of years there. Which, hey, cool stuff. So, Burnerman stage, despite his name, is actually closer to Searchman stage from Mega Man 8 aesthetically. But it's got a lot of just straight up trap level design where you're supposed to just fall for the beginner's traps or learn they're there. For instance, we saw them in that prior screen. I think they show up in a couple more screens after this. There's little foreground barriers that you walk behind, and they have holes hidden behind them similarly to Wily 3 from Mega Man 2. But the only way you can know the holes are there are A, by falling into them, B, watching where enemies are and seeing if they fall into it, or by using Ice Wall to detect where they are ahead of time. Thankfully, I think they only put like 1 or 2 of them over instant death spikes in this level, so I don't need to worry too much about it, but they do come back down the line, so be used to dealing with them. This stage is definitely one I dislike, but it's mostly for how it plays as Bass, because of how many enemies are these little like pseudo gutsmen. They have so much HP and they take forever for him to drain it, because Bass's Buster without a certain upgrade from the shop is just completely worthless in battle. Also, they have that mechanic there, but that's only in that like 1 screen, maybe 1 more after this, where spears kind of jut forward. Mega Man's good for this section too, because you can just slide underneath them. Admittedly, something I wish the game had was the ability to slide as Mega Man with a single button press, not having to press down and jump still. And the Super Nintendo version can do that, because they do that for Bass. He has just straight up Mega Man X's jump, or dash rather. But, oh well. Admittedly, most of my memories of playing this game being rough with Mega Man come down to the end game areas being kind of weird, and the GBA version especially just being awful. Like, it's what I grew up with, but do not play the GBA version of this game unless you're super curious, because the screen crunch is awful. In fact, let me see if I can replicate it real quick right here. Yeah, that's awful, isn't it? Let's just go back to what we were. And it's time for Burnerman. Burnerman, despite being weak to Ice Wall, is actually really tricky to do with just that, because the way Ice Wall works in this fight, it does damage on impact, yes, but you're supposed to use it to push him into the spikes to the side, and it's really hard to do that until the latter half of his health. With that said, he dashes left to right all over the place, throwing grenades every now and then, which will track onto your position. But the main thing he'll do is either use his wave burner, which the Ice Wall can just completely ignore, or he'll jump up and throw 3 projectiles that are pretty hard to dodge. If you just use the Mega Buster, that fight's honestly not that bad, as you can see, but with just Ice Wall, you're in for some problems. Plus, Burnerman himself is absolutely huge, so dodging him on top of the spikes on the far left and right of the arena can be rough. With that said, for beating him, we get the Wave Burner. It's a fire attack that just does a bit of a spread. That's about all it does. It can light certain things on fire, not quite like Scorch Wheel could in Mega Man 7, but it's useful enough for that. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 2, as Mega Man at least, I guess technically part 7 overall, or I forget the exact amount, we're gonna go through more Robot Masters and see what happens then. See you guys then.